board is now in work session to hear from and collaborate with parents of students who have experiences with our special education system. I'm not gonna go, let me do roll call first. Welcome to everyone. With us tonight, we have Alicia Hayes, Judy Newman, Michelle Shu, Gordon Lafer, and I believe that is all of the board members. I'm scrolling through. Thank you for joining us tonight. We also have a collection of guests, and I'll let you all introduce yourselves in a moment. I just want to do a couple of housekeeping stuff. When it's your turn to speak, if you turn on your microphone and take turns doing that, it makes it so that the listening audience can hear and it's well recorded. And I also ask, I know folks are going to be sharing experiences with us, and I just ask that our expectation is that we don't name individual staff members and schools. So if we could if there's something we need to touch base on after the meeting, that would be fine, but during our meeting, if we could keep our stories and experiences without names attached, that would be extremely helpful. So thank you. And each group is going to get, so it's 5:34, is going to get just barely under an hour. And I'm going to leave it to you all to decide how you want to handle questions. So just share with the board if you'd like us to interrupt you, or if you'd like to wait and set aside, whatever number of minutes that you'd like for questions and back and forth. So without further ado, Laura, if you all want to take the floor.
So we're going to do introductions first, or
we can do a round of introductions first, or I was gonna maybe think doing it group by group, so then we just kind of jump in.
Okay, I made it so that everybody's participating in this, so if you want to keep them separate, that's fine, but ours is a very collaborative process. It's Sydney and I are both trained in person-centered planning, and so we're kind of using that approach to solicit feedback from the whole group.
Okay.
And we just feel like the more feedback you can hear, the healthier.
That sounds great. So then what you're saying is you're welcoming everyone to jump in?
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason that it was set aside like this is because the work session was originally born out of a request from a group to offer a presentation to us. So the second half will reserve for that presentation.
Okay. Great.
Perfect.
So first I just wanted to first thank everybody for being here, and I also want to thank the board. I think it's fabulous that in our school district we have a board that is wanting input from parents and is here to listen to a collective group of feedback from parents that all have a breadth of experience. So we noted on our name tags the element, or if our students were in elementary, middle, or high school, so you have an idea of the age range that we all represent and we're bringing to the table. I think that you're going to hear valuable perspectives, and I want to say thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to all the parents who are here to participate in this collaborative discussion, and hopefully we come out of this with some big ideas that we can help move things always forward. So I'm going to introduce Sydney, and I'll let Sydney introduce herself.
And then I'll kind of go through the process of what this presentation collaborative process is going to look like. So my name is Sydney Chamorro. I am a parent to a young man who is now becoming a small business owner, so I'm very proud of that. I've been spending about 2 decades now being an advocate, and person-centered planning is one of my passions about what works, what doesn't work, big ideas, strategies, how do we use our resources. So for me to be here is a great honor. For me as a parent to see this type of meeting happening is really, really wonderful, because it's definitely needed. And part of me wishes this had happened maybe like 8 years ago, because I think there's a lot of need out there, but there's a lot of creativity. I think there's a lot of resources. So what we're going to do in our presentation is we're going to go through 4 different sections, and I apologize, I'm going to stand. But we're going to go through one section is going to be about strengths, what is working. We're going to spend about 10 minutes on that. And then the next section is going to be concerns, and we're gonna spend about 10 minutes listing out those. And there's sticky notes for people at the tables, and we're gonna collect the sticky notes, and Laura's gonna write them out on the computer so people who are watching from home can see them as we're talking about them. And then I'll be posting them on the backboard, so as a visual, you'll kind of see what's going on. And then my favorite area is the big ideas, and that's kind of where we're gonna spend the bulk of the time. And then next steps is just kind of like, let's wrap it up, create some ideas. And so I'm not sure yet where we're gonna have questions. I think I'll leave enough space that we have about 10 minutes for questions of how we go. But this is really just, let's talk, let's strategize, and then Laura and I will bring this all together and make some recommendations and report them back. So, that's what we're gonna do.
Yes, that's. So first, we're gonna start off with the strengths and what's working, and so we would love to hear from this collective group, from parents, about what you feel are the strengths with respect to student services for students receiving special education services. And I'm not gonna be bashful, I'll just chime in and start us all off. I am super pleased that 4J is moving to a more inclusive model. I think all students have an opportunity to learn from one another, and so I am super appreciative of the administration supporting that, and the Student Success Act supporting students with disabilities and helping to close that achievement gap. I think there's more that needs to be done, but I'm thrilled that we're moving to a more inclusive school model.
Anyone else want to go?
I can go.
Okay.
So my name is Connie Coben, and I have a middle school daughter, and we actually are brand new to this. This is our first year of doing this. So for me, checking in with my student is a huge thing. If we can just have some teachers check in with her, see how things are going. My next one would be smaller class sizes. For her, it's so overwhelming to have 40 kids in her class. So with the smaller class sizes, it really helps her. And then we've had really good luck with the IEP teacher, always being helpful and there for us anytime we need to talk to her.
So, Connie, I'm sorry, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Smaller classrooms, you're saying, is that a concern, or is that?
No, that's what
A strength.
some of her class sizes have been smaller this year.
Okay, got it.
Anyone else? Nope, that's not.
Without naming names, my daughter's a teacher. She's in 5th grade, and she is just wonderful and highly skilled. And if anything, I came up to show up for her and her team. She knows how to individualize the lessons for 13 kids. And unlike gen ed teachers who they do teach really large classes, but they teach one lesson. A SPED teacher spends her time individually crafting and spending time at night xeroxing and finding these lessons that are tailor fit to the needs of each child. And that's an incredible amount of work. And she does it, and she did it during COVID. And so I'm so grateful for that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm Danny Crowley, and my son is now a GED grad as of March. And it's been a long road, but I'm gonna piggyback on what Leslie said, that the SPED advisor has been our lifeline. True. There's been just times when didn't know how this was gonna be able to be obtained. And it looked really daunting. And so that is just a priority, that we have that and have the gen ed teachers understanding the neurodiverse. Thank you.
Anyone else? I can share one of mine. My son has vocabulary and language that's a little bit different, and the specialist that helped us with speech and communication and outcome, they kept trying every different thing that might work, like the little switches to buttons to all different kinds of texts. We just kept collaborating and being creative and trying to go to the most simple thing that would work and be successful every time. So I just love that every time we'd be like, nope, this isn't working. And we created a hybrid model for him because it was a little text, it was a little bit of sign language, it was a little bit of buttons. But we all worked together and we just kept researching and trying different things. And I was honest, nope, this is not working. And so we could come back to the table. But having that collaborative, open communication was really helpful.
Anything else as far as strengths?
Anyone from the field? Take a parent that wants to add.
Okay, let's move on to the next. Okay, so concerns is our next category, and we want to discuss possible barriers that you may have encountered with your student, or concerns you may have about your child's future. Any of those things.
I'm happy to start.
Go ahead.
I think one of the challenges and barriers is access to volunteer opportunities and the liabilities I understand with the school district. It's really challenging. And so didn't really give my student a lot of opportunities to volunteer in the community for us to really hone in on his vocational skills. So that for me was one of my concerns. And then the other one was the certificate program. Knowing now what I know, there are some barriers, and I mean, there could be some policy work involved, but definitely I didn't know the right certificate to have to gain access to employment services. And these are some things that we don't talk about with parents when the kids are 15, 16, 17, is you really need to make sure you know what certificate you're getting and obtaining and what that would grant you in the future. If your child's going to need support services for employment, we really need parents to really know what certificate they have and what they're obtaining, because it can be detrimental if you don't want to go down the vocational rehabilitation route, if you just want to get your DDS supports, or if you want to go in the private lane. It's just really important that all parents know what that certificate means and what it equals to access higher education, other types of educational programs. So it's just really, I think, that was a barrier for me, is not understanding, and even me being educated and going to different trainings, I still didn't understand the certificate process.
And I'm gonna say,
Are you talking of the, like, the extended diploma, modified diploma,
Yes,
full
sorry.
diploma,
Yes.
GED? Okay, I agree.
I apologize, I didn't spell it all
one of the concerns I have is that I feel like with this inclusive model that we have adopted in 4J, that there is teaching opportunities for fellow students, fellow parents, about our neurodiverse students and how we can create welcoming school environments for all students. I'm going to share that my son last year was texted and called a stupid R word by a peer, and it has sent us on a downward spiral. And I think there's opportunities for the district. I think in the elementary schools, it's definitely something that's easy to go into the classrooms and teach students about disabilities, but it's not happening in middle schools and high schools. I would like to see that happening, and I would love to see it also being addressed with parents in PTA organizations, doing disability as natural presentations. I think we have a lot to teach our student body about differences, not only our racial, ethnic, religious differences, but also our diversities.
Anyone want to go next?
I'll go next. So, like I said, I'm new at this. This is my first year of actually going through. And some of the teachers don't even know she's on IEP. How that is, I don't know. Some of the teachers are not using the IEP, so she is supposed to be able to retake tests, and they blocked her out of tests. It shouldn't be me as a parent trying to advocate for her. If she's trying to advocate for herself, they should be listening. I have to dig for the information. I am not getting any information. I have to go through and be like, okay, why are your grades this way? I talk to my daughter all the time. There should be something that they're working with these kids about, why is your grade like this? What can we do? How can we better support you? Because it really sends her out of control, knowing that she's getting an F and doesn't know how to handle it. And then getting on a IEP was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. I was dodged. I was told yes, that she was gonna work on it. It went months. My daughter was very suicidal when all of this was going on. And I finally had to write a letter saying, no wonder these kids are killing themselves because they can't get any help. And it was very frustrating. So I just want to put it out there, if we can support the parents that are really, and the kids, what happens if the parents not there to support them? And then my last thing is, I haven't heard anything, and going forward, I know my daughter will be going into high school. We're doing forecasting in April. What does that look like? I don't even know if she's supposed to be on an IEP. I don't know how this is supposed to work.
Thank you for sharing. I know that's hard.
I also wanna bring up the challenge that I see is that from what I've heard is that parent or teachers receive so much PD on universal design for learning, but when it comes to the actual implementation, they're not sure how to do that. And so what I'd love to see is like a teacher mentor system where a teacher who's doing it well is mentoring a student or a teacher who may need more support in implementing UDL. And UDL is Universal Design for Learning for people, I'm sorry, I'm using an acronym.
They can learn how to operate this thing. To add on to what Laura said, referencing back that the great teacher that works with my daughter, I've approached her several times about including my daughter Janet, and she's been very, very open to it, and she's had several meetings, and the gen ed teachers have also been open to it, but when they actually sit down, gen ed teachers, they just don't have any freedom, or it's not that there's not willingness or openness to learning, it's just with the present model, there's two people with well intentions and they're just kind of knocking heads and not sure how to help one another with the time that they're given. One more concern, if I may, is I'm concerned about burnout. I know my daughter's class, the EAs have been replaced 3 times, and I know budget is a hard thing to talk about, but I am gonna bring it up that they need to make a living wage. And our caregivers that we use at home, that we're blessed to have, they make like $25, $26 an hour. And the EAs make maybe $2 above McDonald's, And so a lot of them have quit, not because they don't want to be in the classroom, but it's a stressful environment, there's a lot of high needs, and then they're not paying the rent. So I am worried about teacher burnout and labor.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a really.
And I wanted to bring up one more, is the, I have a senior, and I think I struggle to see meaningful engagement between gen ed teachers, thoughtfully working with sped teachers on, the collaboration, the modification of assignments, or the lesson planning. I don't see that, teachers being afforded that time to work together.
Yeah, I agree. Hi, Jennifer, parent here. And my son is a middle school. He's, yeah, his first year in middle school. And so I wanted to piggyback on the, we're talking about different elements here, like one's social. And so I wanted to address that real quick. When we think about natural supports, that comes from peers, that comes from not somebody that's paid, not somebody that is there to support them in that way. So I agree with Laura as far as education and how do we educate middle school or high school or even elementary on how to support people with neurodiversity, right? Like, what does that look like? And one of the most beautiful things you can witness is natural supports. Not somebody that you're, okay, go over here and see teacher, whoever, right? It's somebody on the playground that goes, hey, so-and-so, come here, come play with me, or whatever, right? That inclusion. And so when we talk about inclusion, that is a natural support within the school system or at school and their peers is absolutely important. So I just kind of wanted to piggyback on that and really put that in one aspect. The other piece, moving into IEP stuff and general education and all of that. So my son's had a very successful year and he has a great teacher. However, I have no idea who any of his gen ed teachers are this year. Not one. And the school year is almost over. So that's a problem. We do collaboration around what we think the electives, good electives would it be art, what we have done, me and the special education teacher have done a lot of collaboration, but I've never had any of the gen ed reach out. Many times, even in elementary, when I would have a conference, they kept looking at this special education teacher. And I'm like, no, I'm asking you, what do you think? How are they doing within your classroom? What does that look like? Tell me more about his friends. And they just keep looking at the special education teacher, and or we'll say, hey, do you want to work on some things? And it's almost like, I don't know, but it's almost like they feel like they have to go through that case manager. Like they can't have a relationship with us. They can't create plans with us for the student, right? Like that they basically kind of have to work through that case manager. That's always been my perception. And that they really want to help, but it's like, well, I don't know, what do they think, right? Kind of idea. And I would be like, I'm not asking them, I'm asking you what you think, we could work out here for my child, right? So I think we really need to work on that collaboration of care and that understanding we're all a team. They're just as much his teacher is that special education teacher, right? Like we're all the same. We're all on a team here. And although the special education teacher will do a lot of the IEP stuff and modifications, but yeah, I used to always tell the gen ed teacher, you're just as important as that special education teacher. It's one of the same, right? So.
Thank you. Got time for one more.
Yeah, I have three. The communication. I need a picture of the communication pathways and structure for parents. Even within on all the way to Andy, Dr. Duck. So that we understand what department oversees what and who oversees what and where are they and who are they and how to get a hold of them and how to keep moving along if we have concern or a situation that's not getting addressed. Also, what's the path of if we do have concerns that are conveyed to leaders, how would those concerns be answered or acted upon or responded? And then that the classic education structure does not meet the needs of our neurodiversity students. The environment and the structure is, it's just not meant to offer the support. And I'm not talking like extreme cases, I'm talking just anxiety, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia. There are just, and we're talking 40 to 50% of our population. And we've got parents that also are neurodiverse, and they're trying to figure it out. So I have a concern for how are we educating parents, adults, the entire school staffs, the lunch folks, the groundskeepers, the parents, and everyone, so that they can understand neurodiversity. It's a growing population, and we better get on board. We have affinity groups for everything else. And now we just this year, thank you very much, got Janae Conrad as the neurodiverse affinity leader. But that's a small speck in this big need. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Excuse me,
And I don't, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, when you said environment and structure don't serve students, I just wondered if you could, I'm not quite sure what to picture, can you spell that out a little more? What do you mean?
Noises, lighting, just the busyness, the chaoticness, it can create the fight, flight, or freeze. And the very primitive part of us is the vagal nerve, and it can be ignited. You can't think it to be, oh, I'm gonna be afraid, or I'm gonna be bothered by that. It just is our nervous system. So it triggers your stomach, it triggers your heart, it triggers your brain, it triggers everything. And then the body reacts to that. So a lot of the behavior that is going on in our classrooms is related very much to the polyvagal nerve and what's happening within each of our nervous systems. And that's the teachers as well.
Thank you.
So does anyone have any questions before we go to our next section?
Before we move on, because we just did the concerns, I just wanna thank you all for being so open. It's a gift that you trust us with your stories and making yourselves vulnerable, telling about the experiences that are not the ones that are at the beginning of the presentation where the strengths, those are much easier to share. So thank you for opening up to us.
Thank you for listening. So our next section is the big ideas. And so what we want to think here is we've outlined some of the concerns, and rather than coming with a boilerplate of many of our concerns, we want to think about what are some possible solutions that we can implement or look at to address some of those concerns that parents have brought to our attention. So I will start. I think, one of the big ideas that I have, and I think it requires legislative advocacy on a lot of parents, is looking upstream at how we are preparing teachers. I don't think currently our teachers, our gen ed teachers, we are very siloed in our university the way we're training teachers. It's special ed teachers or gen ed teachers. And in that very model, we're creating, those are your students, these are my students, and we need to do away with that. Currently, gen ed teachers get one course in special education, and if we are moving towards a more inclusive model, which, yay, I'm all for, I think we need to be supporting our teachers and giving them the tools that they need to be prepared to support all students.
Goodness, where do we start on big ideas? I think one of the big takeaways that I've had is access to the greater community, where it could still be part of the gen ed. My child was not invited to go to outdoor school. So one of my great ideas is, why can't they attend? Because all our kids need to learn how to be in the forest. How do you survive? These are survival skills. Some big ideas is really how to teach kids emergencies. We don't teach kids emergencies. There's just so much out there. How do you handle if you're in a car accident? We don't teach our kids these type of things. When we want to have inclusive community programs, we need to teach how to react and how to be able to handle themselves in a stressful situation, because that is our reality. And then coming from my field is that sometimes our kids aren't given the opportunities to be in their environment that they like. So if they really want vocational, make sure their track is vocational. If they want to do higher ed, make sure that their track, not just the diploma pieces, but they're getting those things in their curriculum that are driving them to the path that they want. I just saw that the Fort J or Springfield's going to do the cosmetology program. Those type of things are huge because it gives the kids options to know about ahead of time. And then the last thing I'll just say is that the IEP process, just be more collaborative. I know that the IEP is the check boxes, but to maybe have parents help rewrite the IEP and, work with the school board on, we know that these things need to be answered because those boxes getting checked is the funding mechanism, but maybe the wording can be changed, maybe how it's aligned. I just think the whole structure is something to think about. It's not going to be an immediate fix, but that IEP is a planning process. And if it's not collaborative, and if it's only one-sided, my child's not going to get to where they want to go. So just making that whole IEP document more collaborative, that parents actually drive some of that with the nuance that we know that those boxes have to be there for the funding mechanisms. Anybody else?
This is a very small idea, but I think if it's implemented school-wide, it could become big. A way to incentivize, is that a word? Incentivize the gen ed community. Now, maybe this is more for elementary, but incentivize the gen ed students to reach out to SPED kiddos. You were talking about like a buddy system. You have like a buddy system for the gen ed students, to reach out or be not responsible, but take on kind of like a mentorship role with the SPED kids. So when I say it's a very small thing, it is maybe particular to our situation and younger, but I think it could become a school-wide thing that they receive validation for it and it becomes something like they can interview the kids. And then, I mean, it's just a socialization thing where everyone learns a little bit more and becomes less stigmatized. It's like, why are you in that wheelchair? I think it's okay to ask. I mean, we tiptoe around things, and there's only one way to break the ice, and that's to start sharing some stories, even the not so pleasant stories. Thank you.
Yes.
One of the concerns that I brought up was the UDL, and I kind of addressed the solution was having mentors, teacher mentors that are doing it well, mentor student or teachers who may need more help in that. So I think that would be an awesome thing that would be hopefully somewhat easily implemented. Easy to.
I'm noticing that Audrey Kramer has her hand up on the screen.
sorry. This
No
is
worries.
so hard.
I know, it's
So
not,
sorry,
it's
Audrey.
hard.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I've been actually messaging the host and the co-host, but I don't think anyone's reading messages. But my name is Audrey Kramer, and I have a son that's been in the Eugene 4J school district since kindergarten. We moved here when they were 2.5, and he went to EC Cares. Hi, Judy. They still remember her really fondly. My son is auditory processing disorder. He was born with stomach and vision issues and did not talk until he was 6 years old. And my twins will be 17 in a month. And although he speaks well, he speaks very slowly and it's very deliberate. His problem in the general education classrooms is that he's got good school friends. And because he talks, I think, very quietly and slowly, a lot of the gen ed teachers will have projects where the students are supposed to pair up with another student in that classroom. And my son is year after year doing projects alone because he's not paired up. I think if a teacher is asking the students to pick a partner, that for those students that are neurodiverse and don't have a free-flowing, confident way of speaking, they're left out. And my son will usually ask the teacher. He's become a really good self-advocate. And every time, and I'm not kidding, every single time, it's been at least a dozen times in the last 5 years, he's been told, oh, it's okay, you can work by yourself, you can do it on your own. Some students can do this on their own. And so he has labored alone on most of his coursework when he's been in a classroom with projects where students are paired up. And so it deprives my son of being able to communicate with other students and maybe make new friends. And it deprives the other students of getting to know who he is. And I just wish, I'm very supportive of teachers, but I really believe that not just the special ed teachers, but the general education teachers need some, not knowledge training in inclusion and diversity, but a sensitivity training, recognizing all of our children as part of the group, that they should be equally included in activities, because that has not been my son's experience at all. And it's heartbreaking to me as a mom, but he just, anyway, that's the comment I wanted to make.
Audrey, thank you. I noted it as a concern, and then the big idea is more PD and sensitivity training for teachers.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other? Yeah.
So one of the big ideas, actually, I talked to Andy Dye about this, as well as many folks in the 4J school district. They're at North Eugene High School, the SPED team, others that my son has had through the EOA. And by the way, I want to absolutely give EOA a big plug that they have been a lifesaver, because the actual structure, all the chaos of the so many kids and just created just a shutdown. And so being able to have him online was marvelous. Actually, COVID was the best thing that happened, because then he didn't feel it wasn't like, oh, you're the only one. And then the next great thing was the future build, and that was magnificent. There were 6 students that would have been probably the students that would have been in the back, just their heads down, very shut down and not engaged. But that gave them a reason to be engaged. It was hands-on, it was interactive. And those are just the things that I think not only neurodiverse kids are just desiring so much for, but all, because we've got to make life be more applicable to what it is going to be that they're going to be doing in their life. So those hands-on activities are wonderful. And then they became leaders in their own right. But I have many communities that I Zoom with. They're from all over the world, the parents, educators, experts, and we are coming together on Zoom and collaborating. And I have offered for those summits to be, we would pay, my husband and I would pay for those that are available to school districts. And that would be in your library of options for the parents not knowing what to do, other students, other administration and teachers. It just 20-minute talks from renowned experts that you would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to have brought in. So anyway, that is my big idea, that we have those resources, they're out there, we need to bring them here. Thank you.
So when I dream big, my dream is that all principals are fully trained on inclusion, and that they have a buddy. The principal has a buddy that's on an IEP, and they can have a buddy for a month, or they can have a buddy for the whole year. But I want every principal to understand the IEP process, the challenges that families have, because the principals are the leaders of the school. And until every single principal gets it, it's not gonna work. And so maybe a collaborative training, but it starts at the leader, and the leaders show what inclusion is down to the teachers, the custodians, the cooks. So my big idea is, as parents, we come up with a training, we can come up, we are collaborative, we are dying for something like this, that we would give our time to develop something that is a leadership training for principals. And then
Here.
so we're getting close on our time, and so normally when we do person-centered planning, next steps are just things that we talk about, but to save on time, that's something that Laura and I can maybe strategize and kind of put up some recommendations on next steps. I think one of the big next steps would be to have more of these type of meetings, if it's quarterly or not. I think it's so important, and I just see the needle changing.
And that's one thing I wanted to say. There's currently a Senate bill right now that I highly encourage. I would love professionals, parents, Senate Bill 575. It's a student success plan for students with disabilities, and it's targeted at improving educational equity and creating authentic engagement between parents and school districts and educators via parent or SPED advisory councils. So I would love to see everybody support that current legislation, write your legislators, but Senate Bill 575. But I agree, and I think that's a model. I kudos to 4J for even doing this, because other districts, I've talked with other, I just came from a conference today with other family network leaders, and other districts are not doing that. So again, I want to applaud the district for allowing parents to come together and raise these concerns and possible solutions with you.
So we have a few minutes left in our segment. I would love to either open it up for questions, or I can sit here and talk for another 10 minutes.
I want to make sure that Judy and Alicia out there in Zoom land, if you have Judy, you have your hand raised.
I did. I have laryngitis, so I'm going to keep this brief, but mostly I just want to extend my gratitude for parents coming tonight to share. I always learn a lot, and it's really helpful information for us. So thank you.
And I just really want to quickly ask any of the parents that are on Zoom if you had anything else to add, because I feel like we may have excluded you, and I did not intend for that to happen.
Or is there a way that people can, after the meeting, add to the notes? They can funnel them somehow to us?
Absolutely.
We would love to make that big idea page, like pages long. So we'd love to have more collaboration on that.
And there's always communicating with the board. So even if it's a few months down the line and you're like, oh, here's something I forgot to say, or something that new that comes up, please share with us whenever. Alicia, I see your hand is raised now.
Thank you, and I too want to thank everyone who shared. I'm sorry I don't have the names. Maybe it's Jennifer. You shared about your son and the projects, and I'm pretty sure if you weren't presenting before, we have heard that story, and I use that to launch in my next piece, which is, 16 years on this school board, and I've had teacher or parent panels. And I find the ones that are most effective are when the board knows what they're going to do with that information. I appreciate hearing stories. As a person with a disability, uses a wheelchair, I have told my story numerous times, and I'm never sure where it goes. It's very personal, and you share of yourself when you do that. But I'm not sure where we as a board are taking this information. So and I know that we as a board haven't talked about that. So I'm hoping, Maya, that is on the agenda coming up, so that we know where we can take this good information, what goes to staff and what goes to us, because we do have that as one of our goals, is looking at and improving our SPED program. So my 2 cents is, let's not just spend an hour listening. Let's make sure something happens. Thank you.
Chelsea, I see your hand is raised also.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to jump in and say thanks for having this meeting. Thanks for having a virtual option. We have 2 little kids, so it was too hard to get away tonight. So this is great. I have a little guy in kindergarten, and we've just had a great experience so far with Gen Ed and SPED, and I'm really grateful for that. And I guess one thing that maybe I should have said in another section is I'm really interested in how to better connect with other parents. I know there's like lots of issues with privacy and all of that, but as a takeaway, Alicia, I know you're looking for takeaways. How do we better connect and collaborate in that way and support each other in that way? I know teachers have a lot on their plates, and I would love to be more involved in that way. So, but thank you again for having this. Really appreciate it.
Gordon?
Thanks. I wanted to ask particularly about the question of trying to create more collaboration between gen ed and special ed teachers. For those of you who are, on webinars all over the country, is there a school district that you feel like, oh, here's a model where that works well? Because I feel like this is something that everybody acknowledges it's not working, and then, like everything's underfunded and thinly stretched, and trying to figure out, okay, how do we make that work within the confines of the system we have? Is there a district, whether in Oregon or someplace else, that you think does it well or does it better that we should be looking at?
I can certainly reach out to the sister family networks and ask their input on that. I think Salem Kaiser.
Corvallis High School, I believe. I can get the exact school, but I had a family that student was in 4J and they transferred up there, and his high school program was amazing. And he is very similar to my child, and so it was a complete opposite of kind of what our school looked like and what their school looked like. But I'm pretty sure it's Corvallis School District.
And I
And the
think it's,
principal has a child who receives services, so I just remember how wonderful they felt about their program.
I can certainly reach out and ask districts that are doing inclusion well, but I think the fundamental issue is just teacher time, being able to be afforded that time to work collaboratively together. It's just not happening.
Right. So from my point of view, we need to cut out something else. Either we're going to lengthen the school day, or and then that's a budget issue, or we can cut out something else. And there may well be something else to cut out that is, that's good, but not as important as this. So that's part of what I'm interested. If you do find a
Or,
district,
and I'm just bringing this up too, with the new going to a semester model in that Friday day, is there an opportunity for more meaningful time for gen ed teachers to partner with special education teachers on that lesson planning and individualizing?
thank you.
Thank you for that question. It was terrific. And just yesterday, I was on an Ed Week, Education Week Zoom. And so 2 school districts were reporting as to their wonderful success. They're not within the state of Oregon, but I will get that information to the school board and to and I'll try to get that recording as well. But that is the base, is that even if they had more time or more collaboration time, is that we need to have the professional development. They need to hear what is neurodiversity, what is ADHD, what is, there are, and these are the invisible disabilities that you may present well, you may look like you can do it, but because you're not in a wheelchair or you're not wearing hearing aids. That's a really tough one. And that's where my student was all along. And so his first quarter in school, he got a F in PE. And he had all along school until he came to public school in freshman year, he got all A's, B's, and a few C's, and he had gone to Marist. So it's a professional development. It's getting ourselves educated about what this population of neurodiverse, and it's, I love this analogy, I gotta share it with you. It's that we have Android phones, we have iPhones, right? And so they both work wonderfully, they both do fantastic services for us. It's just a different operating system. That's all. So working at the strengths based, not what's wrong here, what do we need to fix? It's what talents are you, what are you gonna do for the world? That's where we need to go. Thank you.
Perfectly stated, presuming compliments. And I guess I think that's the perfect way to end our segment. I love that. Thank you everyone for sitting through our person-centered process. Laura and I will take these and come up with some recommendations.
And we'll send the notes to the board.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Thank
it. With that, we will turn it over to you all, and likewise, let us know if you want us to interrupt with questions, or if you'd like to wait until the end.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have some time for that.
Perfect.
So I'll be doing this one, but I'm just gonna wait for really appreciated all of the parents that were before. We're doing it a little differently, but it's a lot of the same, things. We're coming to you as a group that believes that every district wants every child to be successful, to graduate, to be connected to their peers and educators, and to have access to the supports they need when they need them. These students become our future, and that's important to all of us. Success can look like a lot of things, but when you look a little deeper, it's important to know that between 15 and 20% of us are neurodivergent, and that 70% of neurodiverse people are unemployed, that 21% of adults in this country cannot read, and 54% have a below 6th grade literacy rate, and that many of those adults have learning disabilities. We need to do better, and that starts in childhood, which is so largely dependent on the success of our schools. When school districts are truly invested in students with learning disabilities, those students are more invested in their education and in becoming lifelong learners, what we say we hope for all students. They're also more successful in finding their independence and finding their way forward into adulthood. My name is Heather Malera-Huerta. I am a parent of a 5th grader and a 3rd grader, and I am a social studies teacher.
My name is Jenny Kennedy, and I am a family support specialist, and I have been a parent in 4J for 21 years.
My name is Eugene Fellows, and I'm the parent of an 8th grader, and I run a small nonprofit called We Can Be Better.
My name is Ala Gilchrist. I am a 2022 graduate, and I have experience in special education classrooms. I'm Miranda Briley. I have a 10th grader. So we've been in 4J for a decade now. And I'm an accessible education advocate and development work in nonprofit.
My name is Jennifer Duncan. I'm a parent of 3 children, and we've been in 4J for 21 years now.
and I'm co-owner of Applegate Council.
My name is Riley Desmond. I was a graduate in 2017, and I went through my entire school system with a IEP.
My name is Anna Ingram, and I have a 10th grader and an 8th grader in 4J. And I work at the University of Oregon. I've been there for almost 20 years, and I work in a research unit that does a lot of research in literacy.
So as a kind of extension of our introductions, we wanted to give you kind of our group metrics, so to speak, so that you kind of understand where we come from and some of the things that we talk about as a group. The diagnosis that we represent with our children here include autism, anxiety, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, slow processing, sleep disorder, sensory processing disorder, and visual impairment. Of the students that we represent here, there are 13 students. Of those 13 students, 9 of those have an IEP, and 1 of those has a 504 plan. Of the students that are served by special ed services, 50% of our children have been on a behavior support plan at one time. Of our total number of students, 40% have left 4J before they graduate. When we asked, have you seriously considered a lawsuit with the district on behalf of your student? 71% of us have considered that. 43% of us have concluded lawsuits with either a settlement or trial. When we talked about special ed teachers, they're usually our first point of contact and the person who knows the most about our children. They're the ones we spend a lot of time in team meetings with. We asked what percentage of your SPED teachers really understood your child's IEP or 504 plan and were a place of safety at school. We had a low score of 0 and a high score of 100, but the average was 25%. And the final question was, would more fidelity of an IEP, 504, or BSP plan make a significant impact on your students' educational experience and provide more input? 86% said that fidelity of those plans was important. We spend a lot of time working on those plans, and we depend on those plans to help do our part to coordinate supporting our student being successful in school. So the quotes that people provided in response to that question was, one parent said, yes, that has mostly been our experience, and I know it has made all of the difference. Another parent answered, my student had a rather trauma-informed BSP in 2nd grade, but because of the CLC teacher's PBIS and ABA approach, she was unable to carry it out as intended. Behaviorism is never trauma-informed. Another parent answered, if evidence-based reading programs had been provided in elementary school, my child would not only have had an earlier start, but would have not had his confidence blown so many times during his formative years. And now, in high school, when accommodations are so important to success, teachers often don't read the IEPs and don't check in with him to help facilitate a supportive relationship. This year, it took 7 weeks for teachers to provide accessible documents, and that was only because we pushed hard with this IEP team to make it happen. Another parent said we spent all of kindergarten and into 1st grade just fighting to get on an IEP. More fidelity to the identification and support process is the first step. Another parent answered, one of the things our students needed most was consistency. Each interruption to that meant they regressed and then had a harder time trying to catch up to their actual proficiency. And that really adds up over time and makes it harder, not just for the student, but also for the aides and the teachers. So you might ask, why are we here if so many of us have brought litigation against 4J or considered it? And the truth is, it's because we want what everyone here wants. We want a better learning environment and a better working environment for everyone. As you as a board make changes in policies and budgets, if you listen to what we are telling you, the outcomes will be better, and families like ours will not go through the same difficult struggles that we have been facing. All of our voices here are very important to the work that you do for the children of our community and our future. So with that, I would like to be able to let some of our students who have been special ed students speak to you. There's nothing better than hearing from them and really understanding where they come from. Some of the students are here in person, some we have video, and some we have quotes. So I'm going to start with my son, Riley, and yeah.
So I guess I should start with the fact that at all levels of education, I have had struggles with my IEP and with my disabilities, but in particular, it came to a head in high school. In high school, I dealt with a teacher who consistently treated me differently than the rest of the class, and it eventually got to the point where he said it outright to my face, as well as in front of my parents and the special ed teacher, that I did not belong there. And it was very difficult, and I still struggle with that today. It was a moment of recognition that I wasn't accepted there and I wasn't wanted there. And he was defended by everybody, time and time again. As I found out later, he had already been found guilty of discrimination for a similar situation just 2 years earlier than that. And I still had to go through it for another 2 years. And I had to go back into his class the next day like nothing had happened. That was very tough. And to this day, I still struggle with anxiety when talking to basically anybody, especially in moments of talking to individuals who have a figure of authority. It's very hard to approach them because I'm worried that they're not there to help me. I can't ask for help. And so, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I really just wanted to say a lot of things I noticed when I was a student was it just felt like no one knew what was happening. No one understood what it meant to have ADHD or an IEP, and it got to the point where even my classmates were turning against me because this figure of authority was presenting the idea that I wasn't smart enough to be in his class. And eventually they actually staged a walkout against myself and the other student. So the things I would like to see change most of all is I want there to be a better understanding for IEPs, ADHD, disabilities as a whole. And I want there to be more protection for the students. It's really not right.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that very much. Next we have Ella Gasco-Pister. Sure.
Hi, I just wanted to share my experiences throughout my time in education with, to the point where when I was probably in kindergarten, I know that my parents really struggled with getting me an IEP because of my ADHD, and it was especially a struggle, I believe, because it's not something that is always seen. Eventually, it was recommended that I go to a school that's specialized for, or like have a special education classroom. The problem with that was that no one not my parents, not me, nobody expected that I would be discriminated against. No one expected that I would be abused. No one expected that I would be treated like I didn't matter. Really though, what got me the most was the way that I was just blatantly emotionally abused every day. I was 7 years old. I was told that a lot of my outbursts were my fault. And this continued to happen until eventually I just had to move schools again. This seems to be a problem as far as what I've heard with other students and parents. And it's still happening even over 10 years later. And I can't understand, like, why is this still happening? Why are we allowing this to still happen when there's so much discrimination and there's so much pressure put on kids as it is, and to put even more pressure on kids who are already struggling, that doesn't make any sense. I am in support for the students and for more understanding of students with special needs and learning disabilities. I feel like it is vital to have more understanding and require that the teachers who are teaching special education have more, better and more wide understanding when it comes to teaching children with special needs. I also, throughout the rest of my time in school, had trouble with, well, I would act out because I was traumatized. I'd act out a lot. That also made me even discriminated against even more because there was no understanding, there was no trauma informed, there was nobody that was trauma informed. So I was just kind of left to fend for myself a lot of the time. And for about close to 10 years, I'd say I struggled and I honestly didn't think that I would graduate. I actually ended up going to an alternative charter school, network charter school. Network charter school saved me. I am absolutely certain that if it were not for their way of understanding and caring and genuinely being there for students, I would not have graduated. I don't even know if I would have had my GED. Because what they do is not behavioralist. What they do is they treat you like a person, like anybody else. All that I ask is that if there is going to be a teacher, a special education teacher, or somebody who works in special education, I ask that you please treat your students like you would treat your family. Because they are no different than any other kid other than having more challenges. There's nothing wrong with them. And that should never be even pointed out. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ella. Next, we have a video, Zane Davis.
Hopefully you can hear this. Could you hear it? Let me see if I can. So I can't hear it through my computer at all, so. He says, punishments don't work. That's what he wants to tell me.
Thank you to Zane. And next we have, I believe it's a video of Garrett Ingram.
I'm not sure you're gonna be able to hear this either.
What is your disability that impacts school?
I have dyslexia and dysgraphia, which affect mostly sleep jump.
What do you love most about school?
I guess sometimes like focus on one class activities rather than talks. Most of the time,
What is most difficult at school?
mostly big brain assignments, especially classroom environment, speech to text software. Speech to text stuff. As I said, it's difficult, so use those in the classrooms. Also, text to speech would also
If you could change two things about your education, what maybe?
well, the main way that I approach change is sort of personal and sort of much earlier starting speech therapy. I've had speech replacing the second thing try to change is to just have they had the text to speech software in the computers the whole time. They just never do, which that's really bad.
If you could choose 3 words to describe your education for Jason, what would they be? Choose 3 words to describe your angry, and
And then we also have a quote from Reese Candidate. He said, "The 2 things I would like to change in my K through 12 education was having the schools spend less time trying to cover up my learning disabilities and more time changing the way I was taught, and normalizing disabilities throughout the start of the school experience and to the end." So I want to thank you, all of you, the students that contributed to this conversation. I think it's the most important piece that you guys can hear today. It takes a lot of strength. It shows your character. You guys have provided your names and your stories and made yourself vulnerable, and we are so deeply appreciative of you trying to make the world a better place for kids like you. I just want to say, as a mom trying to support my sons on AP from home, one thing that I wish people knew and educators knew is that when you consider the diagnosis and your approach to the problems in school, your perspective will shift. One small example of this is that with ADHD, if you knew that the frontal lobe is not developing at the same rate as a neurotypical child, the ability to filter the world and to organize themselves just doesn't work the same. iPhone and Android. These factors have a big impact on children's academics and social skills. For instance, their social development is 2 to 4 years behind their peers, even though the rest of their brain keeps up with the academic pieces age appropriately. What if you knew in that moment when you see a behavior that is out of place? What if you asked yourself, does this behavior look more typical for a child 2 to 4 years younger? Would your approach to that child be different? I want to thank all of you for doing this today and for hearing from us, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy Phillips next.
Thank you all. So we understand that you have developed some board goals, and I know that you know them, but I'm going to read them. And so that we can connect how we can help you with these particular goals especially. So increased quality engagement with community, family, and student voice, we did that tonight. Increased clarity and transparency of communication from the board and the district to the community. Increase equity within and amongst 4J schools, improve outcomes and experiences for students with disabilities by providing adequate support for inclusion efforts and addressing the inequitable rates of expulsion and suspension. These are areas we would love to help you work on. And I think Anna is going to show our infographic that she had created with our support.
I'm not going to go through this extensively because we are tight on time, I believe. So what I am going to tell you is that we have a website and it's called specialeducationethics.com. And you can see here that we have an infographic. It's a SPED failure map. And really all I'm going to say about this is that even though we all have very different stories, our children have different diagnoses, you heard that in the metrics, we all experience this same series of failures. So I think that's a real takeaway here is that no matter what your story is, if you're a SPED parent, you've probably experienced most of the things on this account at some time or another.
Thank you. So our group offers a full range of lived experiences, and it's important to hear our perspectives. Many of us are parents who support each other and are part of multiple networks of parents of disabled children where we see year after year systemic patterns that impact the most vulnerable students. We can help 4J learn how to shift their lens towards programs and policies and practices that exercise better relational health models that include widespread understanding of child development, neuroscience, and impacts of disability on the lived experience of students. From EAs to teachers and administrators, this understanding is good for everyone. Students, staff, and families will all benefit. We have a second infographic that we want to point you to around ableism, which
Again, the website is specialeducationethics.com, and you can go and find all of these infographics on the website. The only thing that I would say about this is that there is a very broad range of ableism, and there are a lot of things out there that maybe you don't think are ableism, but they are.
Okay, so we are aware that the district has invested in behavioral management programs and has begun piloting programs with different levels of fidelity. What we can all agree on is that whatever the practice, it shouldn't harm relationships or make anyone feel unsafe. It should not set children up to be harmed with punishments disguised as unattainable rewards. This is why choosing evidence-based programs that highlight relational health, co-regulation, and collaborative problem solving are key to safety in classrooms. The more these programs align with relational health, the more successful they will be in the classroom. We want those programs to be selected with an equity lens that fully considers all disabled students, including those with complex and high-cost disabilities and those with invisible disabilities whose learning needs should be more visible to their educators and peers. With that equity lens, it becomes obvious it's time to sunset some of the current programs and look to better solutions that meet our students' educational and mental health needs, which in turn helps make school a better environment for everyone. Often, we don't hear disabled kids being considered in the equity conversation in the district. Leaving them out of the conversation is ableism in action, and it needs to change. This kind of change needs to start at the top and be supported to blossom all the way through the district. So thank you for having us here today. We appreciate that you are listening, and we are ready to help you fully implement better solutions throughout the district. We do have some training recommendations, which I think Anna can pull up on our website. So we have educational neuroscience. The trainer is Lori Desautilles. I can never say her name right. We have a sensory expert, Greg Santucci, who does amazing work going into schools and training staff on how to understand how sensory challenges impact behavior. And co-regulation and collaborative solutions, which is Lives in Balance, led by Ross Green.
So some of the key points of what we're bringing to you today is that, again, we want what you want. We want a better educational environment for everyone, and that's why we're here advocating for relational health for children, aides, teachers, and administration. Creating this environment requires changes, and changes need to start at the top. Ableism needs to be addressed and pushed back against on a systemic level, with anti-ableism intentionally included as a core aspect of our curriculums. Additionally, how we approach students' behaviors need to shift. The default behavior management practices in the classroom have resulted in trauma for many of our children. The continuing escalating behaviors that teachers and staff struggle to manage are more than behaviors. They're communication, and they are our best evidence that something is missing in the educational environment. A strategic move towards co-regulation, true collaborative problem solving, sensory-informed solutions, and applied educational neuroscience is necessary. And we believe that investing in training like this would not only center our children's humanities, but also put our district at the forefront of this important shift towards relational health.
Superintendent Dye was recently quoted saying that there is a reckoning happening in special education right now. We agree, and we want to help make that a better, safer path for everyone, one that doesn't result in litigation and, worse yet, students that give up on learning. So I guess our next steps are, we'd like to know what perspectives or takeaways you might want to share with us from this, what next steps we can support with, and maybe who else you guys might want to hear from about these challenges.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I also have experienced personally masking, and this is something that we need to be really aware of, because there are kids with disabilities who they fake it, and that's how they get by. And when you talk about sensitivity training, how do we get to that level of sensitivity to discern that students are not thriving, they are acting in order to survive? This is just such a complex subject. But it is absolutely dehumanizing to not recognize how each person, each individual functions slightly differently. And it's really challenging, and I just wanted to bring up that that's a really important thing. Because we're putting all our kids together in these environments and mixing them all up, and everyone from parents to teachers to staff to community need to be informed.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions or comments, Gordon?
I always have the same question, which I kind of asked some of you before, which is like, okay, so what should we be doing? And especially what should we be doing within the budget we have, I mean, that all be like snarky, because if the answer is we can't do anything, but some of that is a question about how much can we do with training? Like, suppose we had the best training, people would be recommending somebody else. And is there training that even if you're a gen ed teacher with 35 kids in your class and we have an inclusion model that is understaffed, say, yes, even then, this kind of training will be useful to the student, or do we say, you need to be able to reduce staffing by a certain amount, or you need to be able to use the flex day for, one of you is talking about using the flex day in the high school schedule to have time for collaborative planning between gen ed and sped teachers, like all these different things. I'm not saying, well, we can only do one, but how do you think about, because I can, as somebody who's basically, I don't know this field, but I can imagine as I listen to you talk, how this could work great with a really skilled, well-trained person in a small class. And then I try to think, okay, so what of that can we do, or where should we start?
Yeah, so I guess I was just gonna say that one of the things that we believe is if these trainings, this combination of trainings are brought in, it will create a calmer environment in the schools because it shifts your lens on the way you see children, and a lot of times it helps adults to understand the student better and help co-regulate the student, when instead of inadvertently maybe making things worse because you don't understand that child. So we firmly believe that these trainings would actually help if the entire school system, and yes, the class sizes are too big and there aren't enough aides, but when we bringing in new aides who aren't properly trained doesn't necessarily fix the problem. They really need to have the appropriate trainings in place before we bring in a bunch of new aides, so.
And we do have pricing from all three of the people. And Dr. DeSaltis, Lloyd DeSaltis, the intentional neuroplasty, and she does a lot of work with the adult, understanding what is happening in their nervous system and the vagal nerve that Dan mentioned. And she said that she would do like a 20-minute, she's in Indiana, but like virtual thing for the board or administration or whoever needs to do that, have that information. I tried to figure out my conference.
Yes, I would like to say that in general, on top of having training, I think it's important that we, at least on the level of like maybe school or like a school board, for somebody to, at least like for each school, for there to be a social worker to make sure that there's somebody at least with training and understanding, making sure that the kids in special education classrooms are being adequately cared for, and also for there to be a way for advocacy. So say maybe a kid in special education is having a lot of trouble with behavioral issues, and they're like being told that they're making a choice. I mean, for example, that's what happened to me. I was told that my reactions to not being able to let my energy out were my choice. I couldn't control it. If I could have controlled it, I would have just stopped, But like, if there's somebody there to make sure that the kids are also being well cared for, I think that would also be a really big game changer. I know that funding is limited. I know that it's hard to get people, it's hard to find people that are specifically trained in that area. I just ask for there to be, again, more training and compassion for students, treat them like people who just have challenges, because that's really all it is. They're just people, little people with big emotions and big challenges. Thank you.
I think two things come to mind when you ask that question. One is that when you do have budget for these kinds of trainings, that you look to groups like ours for people who have lived experiences to help you prioritize how to spend those dollars. And for us to be able to have this kind of conversation with you where we say, this is more important than this, that's the first thing. The second thing that comes to mind is that for this to really flourish throughout a district who wants to be innovative and who wants to be cutting edge, it has to start at the very top. The school board has to be embraced by the executives, and it has to be, flow naturally all the way down through to, the guy that mows the grass. I mean, that's what this district is about, that we are about this kind of inclusiveness, we're about relational health, that we are putting these things together in a way that is understood and practiced from the very top all the way to the very bottom, and including parents in the conversation. And again, thank you for having us, because this is, refreshing that you're listening. Thank you very much.
I think we also need to.
Hey, Michelle, we can't hear you. Could you get the mic closer?
I also think that we need to acknowledge that we have experts in 4J. We have students and parents who have had excellent experiences, and we need to listen to those experts and prioritize the skills and experience that they have. We need to look at successes, and it's not simply a training and those are free. It's great to have training from experts in the field, and they can see that things are going on across the nation. And as Jennifer had said, it is about practice and implementation. It's not simply having, going to a seminar and learning about polyvagal theory. And it's great to have that information, but we have skilled, knowledgeable people in our district now. And we need to listen to them.
Lorena, I saw you have your hand raised, so I don't know if you still wanted to add something.
Earlier, yes, I did have my hand raised, but I think I want to speak. Yes, there are experts.
I'm sorry, but those of us online can't hear anybody in the room right now. Thanks.
Hear me now? Yes, there are experts that are doing incredible work in the district, and there are families that have had amazing successes in the special education program, and none of that erases the experience of families and students who have been harmed in that very same system. And that is where the lived experience of that harm really needs to be centered in the discussion and looking for solutions, because if you don't center that, then you erase that experience in a way, and if they're already not impacted by all of these successes that are happening over here, then they're not going to be involved in that conversation. And then when you focus on those most vulnerable students that are experiencing harm in our systems, you increase the successes for those who are already experiencing success.
I'm going to use Miranda's case.
One, in response to Gordon's question, one thing that we could do that would cost nothing, could possibly even save us in the budget, is to simply follow the procedures we should be following in special education, with identification, formulation of your IEPs and your 504s, following your 504s and your IEPs. I think that we waste mostly our children's formative years, but I think we waste a lot of budget too on a crisis model that requires children to fail over and over, and even fail through interventions that weren't necessary but would have been easier for the school. That's a little bit of Garrett's story and my son's story, that they had to go through Spedford or a speech first, because the speech intervention would have been easier. And when I listened to Riley and Ella
they're an older version of my child, and so I am so grateful that they're here speaking up and sharing their stories. But I think, and I mean, as young people, I think they've all pretty clearly articulated that the school spent a long time and a lot of effort in trying to deny their disability. And I think that when we have a lot of the stories too, the discrepancy between these stories of things that go well and don't, a lot of the families that feel really supported have very visible disabilities, and those get supported. And that can actually feel, make those of us who are just trying to get the precise same supports feel even worse, because we see that it's possible and that those supports are there, and it's not, that we're just being made to, we're just being put through the paperwork and the bureaucracy and the barriers. And so I think that's an aspect of, that's something that could be shifted within, very intentionally shifted, that wouldn't cost us anything.
I see Jennifer on Zoom, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to, there's a couple different pieces of this, but I know when I first learned how to advocate, I didn't know what I was doing, right? And so like I would get really mad and rip up papers and say, I'm not signing that and I'm not doing this. And then I worked alongside, the Arc Lane County, and they would be like, well, that's not really advocating. That's just like expressing anger. And I'm like, oh shoot, and so I had to take a lot of time, but I had a lot of mentors that showed me what to do and how to advocate, and then it's interesting because moving forward many years later, I remember the administrators going like, hey, do you want to be part of like our policy change? And I thought, wow, I've come a long ways, right? From ripping up the papers and being angry and stomping out. And but one of the things too is I collaborated a lot with the parents, and we would do observations. So I would just encourage that you all, the board and administrators, spend some time observing some of the classrooms, maybe writing down, what do you see that you like, what do you see that you don't like, what would you like to learn more about. I think actually going into that environment on some level and really observing and kind of taking key notes and kind of coming back together and going, what did you see, what did you see? And I think when we can do that to really to say, how can we solve this stuff, go to that environment, find out more information within that environment, and bring that back to the table of what you see that you might like, what you don't like, what you feel is working, and just collaborating together, I think would be a good solution. So
Judy, I see your hand raised too.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I better pass. My voice seems to be getting worse. I'll save the comments.
Anybody else? Jennifer?
I think the other piece to that, that is directly tied to this, is what do you save by reducing litigation? I understand that 4J is litigated more than other districts in the state considerably. And so you need to be talking to people like us to know what is the point at which that happens, what needs to happen so we don't get to that point. No one wants to get to that point, and everyone has tried multiple layers of asking for help before they got to that point. No one went to that point first. So it's really important to understand that as a board member, and to understand what that cost really is. What is the cost of the insurance premium for that? What is the cost of the litigation itself? What is the cost of the staff time that you're spending in all of the meetings that led up to it, and the IEP meetings and the staff meetings and everything that led up to that, and the work that you have to do just to send out the redacted records request? That's a huge amount of work. So when you start to understand what those costs are,
If you can start to reduce those costs and spend that money on training, that's something that works for everybody. And that's why we're here, trying to get it to the point where families don't have to go to litigation. That's also a privilege for most families to be able to do that, and that's not okay. And the kids we worry about the most are the most vulnerable, and the ones that weren't able to be able to go that path. But those pieces that have been litigated, what are they telling you? What are they telling you about what's broken? Why was the IEP not followed? Understanding those pieces and understanding that there needs to be a lens shift on how you're addressing these children is going to help you save the money that you can use on being a more innovative and more inclusive district. And we're here to help.
Anna, were you raising?
No, I'm not. Looking at the chat.
Okay. Amy?
Just a couple of things to address things that came up earlier. In terms of the collaboration schedule, I understand from middle school teachers that and parents, we're in the middle of taking feedback for middle school schedules, so I'm not sure if high school schedules have been done, but considering collaboration schedule, and Springfield, right next door to us, has had a collaboration schedule for 10 years. So maybe see what they're doing. I know that Brooke should be very familiar. I think that she was there when that was happening. So maybe, check what's going on there and how that collaboration schedule is set up. And then the other thing is in terms of addressing kind of widespread ableism, there is a requirement. I don't remember the state bill or this the bill, but in the ethnic studies bill that requires kind of what's happening with ethnic studies, disability studies is a part of that. And please don't let that be buried. We need to pull that out and have disability studies from elementary through high school. And we have book recommendations, all kinds of things if anyone wants to hear about it. Well, I was just gonna say, our book recommendations can be found on our website.
Go ahead.
Maybe you've already done this, I just wanted to make sure that we can get, in writing, like the presentation that you did at the beginning, and you ran through much numbers, will you email that to the board? Tonight, other than saying, look at our website for it.
I just wanted to answer, I think it was Eugene who asked the question, I think a series of questions, but one of them included who do we also want to hear from? And not to take away from any of the parents here tonight, but Riley and Ella and the folks who shared their statements, those are the voices that I want to hear more from personally. When you were, I'm so deeply moved, and when you were talking, Jennifer, about cost, my brain kept going back to listening to Riley and the cost of the experience on you and your soul and your sense of self and your way of being and moving through the world. And I just want to, there's no way to put a finger on that, but I would like to at least try, and I think that that's by hearing from more of you all, in particular, those of you who have gone through this system, like for a huge number of years. Not to say that you're like old, I don't know that you are at this point, but I really deeply appreciate your willingness to share your experiences. They're really hard to hear, and what I have to remember is that as hard as they are to hear, they were infinitely more difficult to experience, and I want to honor that. And I want to recognize you all as experts because there are no more greatly impacted stakeholders than our students. That's why we're like, everyone is in here, all of us. So I would like to hear from students more. Also, I'd like to hear from staff, those that are in the classroom writing the IEPs. Also, you know, I heard a word over and over and over and over today, and I started with Laura mentioning that she wanted to have this be a collaborative process, and I think it just ended with the comment about collaboration. And I hear that also echoed by our teachers and our EAs, and I just want to make sure also that we don't lose sight of the EA component of the collaboration as well. A lot of students, I mean, most students in this receiving services often spend more time with EAs than actual teachers. Not actual teachers, teachers. We need to imply that they're anything other. So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the role of the EA, not just in being trained, but also in being included in those conversations. And you know, it's already hard enough to get everybody to get to an IEP, but recognizing that those EAs also somehow their voice needs to make it into that conversation and into this conversation. So I want to continue to hear from parents, but I really want to hear from more students, and I really want to hear from staff to see, you know, it's about recognizing patterns, right? So even tonight, these two groups that didn't collaborate together and yet collaborated among themselves, there were so many patterns that presented themselves, and I'd like to see where those patterns emerge with those other stakeholder voices included as well. So that's my answer to that question.
I really appreciate you recognizing student voices, in particular me and Riley. I've been waiting for so many years for somebody to want to hear my voice, even though I've shared it so many times over and over again ever since I was that little girl. Even at that time, it's so important to me that my voice is now just being valued and validated. It means the world to me, so thank you.
Jenny?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, there are students like my son Zane, who you saw on the video. He has complex communication challenges, and so sometimes it might be hard for him to express that he has years of experience with being harmed by behavioral interventions in schools because of how misunderstood he was. And I am his facilitator and his voice, and he and I are partners in advocacy. So just keeping in mind that there are students who maybe need support to be able to have their voice heard as well. And then I think Miranda was going to read a poem if we have time, unless there's anybody else has any questions.
That's a perfect time to ask if anybody else has questions or comments, because we have a few minutes left. So I think closing it with a poem sounds delightful.
Could I just?
Absolutely, Jamie, go ahead.
Hi, thanks again. I wanted to validate what Jenny just said, that some of our students are not as socially adept, or it's been us parents that have been their advocates, their scaffolding, their encouragers, and we have been the ones that have continually reached out, and it's our advisors, our SPAD advisors, that were our lifelines. All that being said, though, all of what we're asking is that it does not matter if you have a disability or if you're neurodiverse or neurotypical. All of the things that we're asking for and suggesting help everyone. And that's the baseline. If you have this such valuable information, and you've got it right there at your fingertips, and you know how to implement it, then your classrooms are calm, your children are calm, their learning goes skyrocketing. It's all for the benefit of your numbers that you want to produce, and all of the students are all winners in what we're requesting. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. That's a really important reminder. I really appreciate it. And I think that's a great closing comment, honestly. I think that it probably cements the whole theme of this interaction. And before you start, I just want to say thank you to everyone for doing this. This is a new thing for us, as far as I know, in terms of the work session. And I appreciate you all jumping in and being willing to come and share and open yourselves up and give us a lot of information and stuff to think about. I know I took a lot of notes and look forward to looking at your website. Thank you for putting it all in one place for us, and the notes that you took, which were, I tried to keep up, and I appreciate you doing that. So Miranda?
So, a note first, this poem is about probably 11 years in the making, and it encompasses years and years of IEP meetings. But my intention with it is to capture the heart of some of what we're talking about and distill it to reflect the emotion behind the work that we're doing here today. Because our children, our teachers, and our families in this district are whole and real people who are impacted by what happens in this boardroom. And I believe that closing with poetry is one of the best ways to remind us of all of that. How do we share this with you when there isn't a word strong enough to encompass the way this fear holds court in our hearts with the betrayal we have all learned to expect? How do we share this when we have all of the words, or when we need all of the words and have none? We need words that offer glimpses into those moments when we realize that we are having the same conversation. We are hearing again and again from the same mouthpieces, the same words, and all that words ever equate to is a perpetual diminishing, a constant denial of not only our children's needs, but of their very humanities. We need all of the words and have none decades now, and too many of us sit across these same tables with these same people, telling us these same things, and even if we had the words, they would not listen. You see, they have never listened. And all our words are only ever empty, adding up to years of wasted breath. We need a word that captures the moment it sinks in that these same adults have been actively fighting against us for years, fighting against supporting our children. We need a word big enough to hold all of this rage, big enough for all of this confusion, because there is no logic to the way administration cannot see their betrayal when they sit at this table convincing us, convincing themselves they are here to support. Where is the word that expresses the way righteous anger is always trying to hold off an ever-present sense of defeat? How can we convey the strength of temptation to finally let them win? Because at least then, the yelling into this void of special education would finally come to an end. We need the literary equivalent of those movie scenes, the ones that capture in slow motion a person walking away from some disaster. They always look so peaceful, and they never look back at the explosion, the fire, the collapsing building, the anything. But we choose from the options available, and walking away will never be available because it will never be just about our kids. So where are the words to convey that public education has been burning for years, and those who can make the most impact? Policymakers, the superintendents, the administration stand back at a safe distance. They stand back and watch it burn, knowing our children are trapped inside, and maybe when the smoke clears, they will stand around the ashes and say things like, "At least we tried." If only that mother had been more cooperative at the IEP meeting. If only parents were more involved, less involved, involved how we want them to be involved, involved in a way that doesn't ask too much of our salaries, our retirements, our pension plans, our safety nets. If only labor conditions weren't learning conditions and teachers didn't deserve their own safety nets. If only they had stopped complaining about class sizes and asking for prep periods and trained EAs. If they would just keep doing more and more with less and less. If only the kids would stop acting out, reaching out and seeking, needing and not finding safe adults around them. If only the students tried harder, then we could all just go home. Maybe when the heat dissipates, they will walk through the burnt out school buildings across the bones of our children, truly believing they cared. But if they had listened to us in the first place, this conversation would have ended. But instead, we are at this table asking once again, always again and again, waiting for the same thing for our children. Actual support and genuine educational access, not the ableist bare minimum convenient enough for a school district to provide and still legally say at least they tried. How do we share this with you when there isn't a word strong enough to encompass a betrayal that we have spent decades learning to expect? How do we share this when we need all of the words and have none?
Thank you to everyone. With that, this work session is now closed at 7:34.